This area might take, I don't know, 40 minutes. It might be probably one of the longest drawings. I was kind of tempted to leave this part bright here. Some kind of arm. Maybe it can be something. Oh, it kind of seems a little flat. We'll see. Maybe we'll come back to it. So I was talking about the pressure that artists feel of like having to curate their own work before they're being curated. So like the curators don't even have to do any work. Curator's job is to find an artist, basically. Find the artists. Look around. Artists should not be obliged to come to the curators with like laminated portfolios. Look how I curated my work for you, so you don't have to do all the work. So yeah, I never have time to like arrange my series into cohesive like themes and write statements and bios and prepare portfolios. It's like, it's a hustle. It's like a requirement that doesn't have to be there. If the artists focus just on their work without wasting time on these silly things like self-promotion that they're being told that it's the most important thing. If you spend all your time on self-promotion, what is it that you're promoting, since you don't have time to even create things that you would be promoting? So this ultimate paradox. You must spend pretty much all of your effort, all of your time on the art. Develop your art. Quality of your art will suffer if you don't spend time on it. So it's a compromise I'm not willing to make. I think for too long artists have been in this headlock of tastemakers and gatekeepers, just kind of doing the dance. Like, I'm not doing the dance. Oh, if you do this or that, if you work in this way or not that way, then you won't get any exposure. No gallerist will ever want to feature your art. Well, boo-hoo, too bad. Gallerists should do a better job at developing their own way of consuming art, which is based on things that are more important than making a happy buck. Looking at ways of, certain types of art that will make the most money to pay the rent. It's a headlock. It taints the experience of art making and the reception of art in general. It's still a little better because in the old days it used to be that the person with money called the shots even more, like the church or the wealthy landlord would pay you for painting or sculpting in a certain way, the way they want it. And the church would always want you to paint holy scenes from the Bible. And the wealthy, there would be like a wealthy landlord that would also hire you to paint something and just to show off their wealth, and they would give you a lot of gold and lapis lazuli to use in your painting, and it would have to be like overflowing with blue, because to show his wealth you had to paint like most of the characters wearing blue robes. And the concept of artist as an individual, independent individual that creates things that expresses themselves freely, hasn't been around for long. In ancient time, there was no such thing as artists. Artists were considered artisans, craftspeople, and they would be hired to just make pretty things and develop their craft. We call it art now, but the status of a sculptor or a painter in the Renaissance was a little bit less than we think of it now. It was just like a carpenter or any other craft person. And in ancient Egypt, there would be also like no need to even individualize artists with like putting their name on their works. And artists would be just servants to the regime and to the religion of ancient Egypt, because it was kind of like a death cult, and most of the art making in ancient Egypt was about afterlife. So the artist would create these pictograms and murals, paintings on sarcophagi that would be buried, and that they wouldn't even care like that their art won't be displayed because it will be buried in the dark sarcophagus in a pyramid or something, or in a tomb. And so like they would make these scenes of afterlife. They would paint them even in the kind of hard to reach places, like bottoms of the sarcophagus, and like, because it wasn't really about the prestige or about showing off their craft. It had ritual nature. So like it was kind of interesting that the function of art wasn't for the living. You would make your little pictogram and bury it forever, as far as you knew. I mean, right now these artworks are being unearthed, recovered, and shown in museums, but it wasn't planned by the artists or by those who commissioned these artworks. Pure ritual. It makes me think about like what would I create if I set it up from the start? Like, for example, this drawing, if I knew that this drawing, I'm just drawing it and then I'm going to bury it forever. Would it still be the same drawing? Do I still have a little bit of a narcissistic element in it, where I'm like kind of hoping that someone will enjoy this drawing, or it will be displayed somewhere? I wonder if the Egyptian artists craved attention. I mean, they probably craved praise, and the best praise was to be hired and get paid. But I know they probably didn't get many likes or subscriptions. Am I rushing it? I kind of feel like I'm rushing it. Why would I rush it? Probably thinking about leaving. This kind of makes me rush. But we're not leaving for another few hours. There's this rush I feel whenever I'm about to go on a trip, or like I sense an end of some kind of era, some kind of time period. I tend to go into the frenzy of projects, creating things and cranking things out, and I always get a lot more done before a trip. It's like, oh, it's almost, I'm running out of time, I have to do something. It's sort of almost like a kind of tendency that transpires from the fear of the end of life, where people who are diagnosed with something terminal, they suddenly find this great drive to leave some legacy and to actually, leave something behind, and they start creating things. They maybe they do much more than they did in their entire lives. So that kind of makes you think about the benefit of that awareness of the end, where if you were sure that you're going to live forever, what would be your drive to complete things, to do stuff, to make art, create something? Since you have all the time in the world, would you even want to get up from your butt in the morning? Make this one a little darker here. This is my chance to make a dark spot. How dark can we get? Not as dark as I thought. It is very responsive graphite, but graphite only is as dark as it gets, because the lead itself has certain darkness. So even if you really apply a lot of pressure, you leave a lot of graphite on the paper, it will only be as dark as the pencil lead itself. Obviously. Alright, I think I will call this part 2. I feel like I've done enough for now, and I feel a little bit of a tiredness, and I feel like the drawing needs to breathe. I need to leave it there. Alright, let's finish it. But I think in this part we're going to have it completed. At least I will fill up the remaining 1/4 of the drawing. So in this, let's get a little political in this one. I don't want to bum you out, because maybe you're watching this in the evening and you want to wind down, but just kind of one of those strange queries I have about how people change their mind and how they are almost like having this memory of a goldfish, and then they claim that what they believed before is no longer truth, and in fact they actually never believed it. So go back in time to about the year 2001. 9/11 happened. Everybody was mad, everybody wanted accountability. We found out who was responsible. Everybody wanted to go after Bin Laden. But then the military-industrial complex in America needed something more. So the president, George W. Bush, at that time, just decided to bomb Afghanistan, send troops, and wage what later turned into 20+ year military campaign in Afghanistan, occupation of the country. And then, of course, for bogus reasons, he found a pretext to invade Iraq for some reason. It's still unclear what was the connection between 9/11 and Iraq. Weapons of mass destruction turned out to be just a lie. But anyway, as you know, the opinions about waging a war were severely divided back then. There was a group of society that opposed the wars. No wars. There were anti-war protests to oppose the war in Afghanistan first and then in Iraq in 2003. I've gone to some of these protests. I had an anti-Bush t-shirt, and I've been called out for it by the so-called red-blooded real Americans who would stick those silly little yellow ribbons on their SUVs, attaching their China-made American flags to the side windows. And it was all about, bomb them, America is the strongest, we will defeat our enemies, we have to be strong and basically bomb the crap out of whoever is even suspected of wanting harm. So there was this whole war on terrorism that involved most of all bombing Middle Eastern countries and mostly Muslim countries, and harassing Muslim citizens in the US. And those were all done by, people who wanted to wage the war with terrorism by bombing. And there was the whole group of people who watched Fox News that would buy those yellow ribbons, support our troops ribbons, and stick it to the cars, and really be very hostile towards anyone who would even slightly voice their opinion against the war. So 20 years pass, now we are here, and now the same people who are watching Fox News, who used to have these little ribbons, now they're saying that regime change wars and all the foreign wars are bad for America, America first, we never supported it. I'm like, that I have the evidence that you have. And now they are pinning the warmongering on the progressives. They were talking about how if Democrats win, there will be this endless war. Since when? That side, the Democratic side, was always pushing back against wars, although I know many Democrats liked bombing too. I think Hillary Clinton would be bombing a lot, and Bill Clinton was quite a bomber. He bombed the crap out of former Yugoslavia. So these red-blooded real Americans are now flipping the script and telling us, whoever was against the wars back then, that they are now the warmongers and America first, and now suddenly it's almost like we find ourselves in an alternate universe when the leftists, the progressives, were warmongers, and the so-called conservatives, loosely used term, are now against the war. When did that happen? But then, when Biden went through the withdrawal from Afghanistan, they gave him trouble for that. Not so long ago. So like, did they want to stay in Afghanistan? Did they want out? Now they want out. They don't want any new wars. It's all very confusing to me. Maybe you can help me figure it out, because I give up. So it's like we have this ability to like twist everything and like without even blinking, like portray the reality in a very false, with this very false narratives. It's almost like false memory. We're like, oh, we never supported the war. I can still see the faded yellow ribbon on your bumper. You can't wiggle your way out of that. You can't have a cake and eat it too, multiple times. You can't have a cake, eat it too, then digest it, excrete it, and then eat it again, because that's basically what it seems to be happening here. This part of the drawing is getting a little bit more spicy, but that's okay. The controversy will bring more clicks. Based on the number of views of my former videos, I can't really come to a conclusion why some videos have more views than the others. Maybe it has something to do with the title. The one titled "Are You a Golden Retriever on the Beach?" so far got most views, 15 views, wow. And then there was the one that was also politically inclined, about Second Amendment, second largest amount of views. I'm not counting on likes, just views. So like there's some kind of maybe controversy hook, or maybe the title that kind of keeps people interested. Maybe the dog in the title. I need to put like more pets in the title. Golden Retriever could have been the keyword for people to get really pulled in. Maybe I should mention a cat. I did play with ChatGPT a little bit, and I asked the robot what is the most catchy headline for a YouTube video that would grab most attention, and it came up, it spewed out some strange gibberish, like how to glitch the 2026 reality. Do not watch it after 3 a.m. It's like, yeah, those words are most likely to bend the algorithm towards most views. And I just don't know why. And not ChatGPT often gets things wrong, sometimes very wrong, and it's just something to be cautious about when we are about ready to rely on the knowledge of ChatGPT entirely. Just sometimes it says the weirdest things, and sometimes inaccurate things, and to the point of like thinking that if I followed the advice, I would be in big trouble. And then I called it out on it, and it's like, oh, my apologies. I misunderstood the premise. It's just, yeah, it's really glitchy still. It's kind of like ChatGPT is a little bit like a friend with amnesia. You have like a friend who is very forgetful, or misunderstands you all the time, or tries to help without being asked to help. I kind of like the texture that this pencil gives me. It's a little bit more like a wool, almost like very woolly texture. It corresponds well with the texture of the paper. And I sharpen my pencils the way my grandfather showed me how. My mom's dad was an engineer. He was very educated, highly educated, more educated than his schooling actually provided, because he was always curious and he read a lot of material on his own. So he really delved outside of his profession, which his learned field was figuring out the mining components for mining machines, designing the machines that mine coal. Very industrial kind of job, and he had like a lot of respect in his field. And supposedly he made a lot of money also, but nobody ever saw that money. He stashed it somewhere. And yeah, but he was the one that also kind of sparked a lot of curiosity in me, because I spent some time with him, and whenever he visited, I always got something interesting out of it. He always told a story about science, about the universe. I really liked listening to him talking about the early days of humanity. Sometimes facts of philosophy and life in general, and sometimes he would say things that are pretty harsh, but then again, life can be harsh. There are these paradoxes and conundrums that we don't think about. Like, we are killing mass amounts of innocent animals to have food. And it sometimes just feels wrong. So he would call out all these like little compromises that we kind of accepted as reality. Like, wait, like when you think about it, suddenly it's like, wait, is it really the case? Like, oh, and he was a skeptic, and he would anger my dad, because my dad is a believer in the Bible, and my grandfather would, because he was so well versed in the entire Bible, that he would find these controversial passages and just cite them like he knew them by heart, and he would just quote a Bible verse that was like contradicting what we knew about the teachings of Christianity. Like, oh, there's that in the Bible too. Someone who wrote a passage about, I think, prohibitions of what to eat, what not to eat, and there was one where you're not supposed to eat this, of course, the shellfish and all these, lobsters and like sea creatures. And there was one creature that was kind of made up almost, because it was described as a flying insect with 4 legs, and you're not supposed to eat that. And then also like putting bats and birds under one category, like bats and other birds. Like basically, it just shows that people in Bronze Age didn't know that bats could have been from a different genus, species than birds. It's flying, so it must be a bird. But yeah, he really, like my grandfather, really opened my eyes on detecting these kind of conundrums, and like he really encouraged me to question reality. And that's enough. If you're that curious, you question reality, you want to find out more. And that's enough to actually learn more stuff. It's like, you know, it's kind of like a template for good learning. Rather than forcing kids to memorize facts and read a lot without showing them a reason why, you just spark their curiosity, just teach them how to question facts or opinions, and then they will be just excited about research, and they will want to find out stuff, as opposed to like when you make them learn without showing them any reason why, or just because you have to do well on the test. That's not a good motivation to learn stuff. And my grandfather also had a knack for constructing devices and cool things, so he would like help me with some school projects, science projects. Sometimes I would get in trouble because they were just way too well executed for to pass as a project done by a 12-year-old. So like I would just tell the teacher, "Oh, my grandfather helped me a little," but the teacher wouldn't buy it. So, yeah, looks like your grandfather did the whole thing. So he designed this. The assignment was to create a device that alerts you about the water level reaching a critical point, so that it would shut down or create it would sound an alarm of some kind. So like when you fill a container with water, it was supposed to alert when the water level reached a critical point. And of course, as a 12-year-old, I had no clue how to do this. And I asked my grandfather to help. And so for me and for my brother, because we were in the same class and had the same assignment, he came up with two separate projects, two separate ideas. For me, he engineered a machine that works a little bit like a scale, like scales. So he would create a 3-point support with flexible metal. I think he used razors for it, conductible metal that was connected to a circuit of wires, then attached to a light bulb or buzzer. And on those razors, there would be a container resting, so that, you know, the round container would rest on 3 razors. And when the water was poured, the container would get heavier. And then it would reach the razors that the container rested on would reach the connection point and trigger the connection, and the light bulb would go on. And that was an A+ execution of that assignment. And for my brother, he devised a different system. He decided to go with a floater. So he kind of like in a toilet, when you fill up a container with water, there was this little floater that was made out of styrofoam attached to an arm, and when the water reached a certain level, then the end of the arm, the lever, would be connected to a circuit, and then in turn that would trigger the light bulb. So that was totally a different approach, and I can think of some other ideas for it now in hindsight. Like you could make one where the alert system would be very simply, like you could even make it analog without connection to electricity. Simply drill a hole in the side of the container where you want the water level to stop rising, and then the water would just float out of the hole. but then it would probably flood the floor, so that's not the best idea. But yeah, it was simpler than, you know, like having a sensor of some kind. That looks like an ear a little bit. So yeah, that's my grandfather showed me this way of sharpening the pencil, and I've used it since then. Just with a sharp knife or razor. I found that the standard sharpeners, you know, the kind of turning ones, are not sharpening. They don't give you enough graphite, enough point, and often they just break the lead. It's kind of wasteful. Almost the end of the drawing. Yeah, so every drawing is the same and yet different in some way. This one seems like it has more detail and more contrast because of the more softness in the graphite. And then my other grandfather, my dad's father, was an interesting person too. He was more of a forager. He liked to be hiking a lot in nature. He was actually born in the wild. he spent most of his life in the forest, like foraging for mushrooms, learning how to make preserves. He would make wine out of pretty much everything he could find. He was a little bit of a simpler man. He probably had less of a formal education, but a lot of raw wisdom. He had a lot of skill. He kind of reminds me of the almost like a tribesman, like in Amazon forest, like knowing plants, knowing how to use them. He taught me how to get the fire going in the rain in the forest. That's a very useful skill. Of course, he used matches, but the key was to make the fire out of pretty wet wood and keep it going under the natural umbrella of a canopy of the tree. So like it was a little risky to make the fire under the tree, but since it was raining, it was fine. And just, you know, it was a great way to like wait out the rain without getting cold and wet. So I spent a lot of time with this grandfather too, just foraging for raspberries, mushrooms, learning the bushman craft. Yeah, he was a bushman. And so I learned a lot from my ancestors. Probably less than, I mean, I kind of regret that I didn't take more advantage of their knowledge. But when I was young, I just didn't really think about it as much. Here's the corner. Should it be dark or should it be light? Or gray? There are more than two options, more than three options. There are infinite numbers of options. It's almost scary to proceed when you think about it. you just roll with it. Whatever happens, happens. Alright, so that's kind of a wash. Maybe I'll make this part a little darker. Without boring parts, the interesting parts wouldn't seem as interesting. Almost. Here's the exercise in restraint. That's when I'm really trying not to rush. I'm always tempted to leave this light, but it never really looks like it's finished. It feels like, it always looks like a cop-out. Or like a little glistening part here, but it's a little bit too far to the right, the edge. This light part looks pretty good. Like a little mushroom sprout or something. Take it slow. This is the vital part. This is the important culmination. Shouldn't be rushed. Apply restraint. Maybe I should be talking to myself in a second person or third person, the royal we. I think you should apply more pressure here. Oh, that sounds weird. I think he should apply less pressure here. He, it. In reaching the meditative state, we forget our identity that we created for ourselves. Like, am I a male? I don't know anymore. Am I, how old am I don't care. You know, how am I successful? Who cares? If there's no identity, what's my name? I am a being. I am the whatever is behind my senses to observe this reality. And it's not me, the me that I used, the me that I introduced myself as to strangers. It's the kind of a deeper me, like some people call it I. What's an I? It's the thing that made this drawing. Some kind of sub-brain, sub-mind, subconscious awareness, at the same time very conscious awareness. We often feel like we're fragmented, like one part of our mind is at war with the other part of our mind. Sometimes it feels like we are working against ourselves. Like, why am I doing this to myself? That was something we often say. Why would you do that to yourself? Who is you? Who is yourself? Why are there two entities? Sometimes there are more than two. Sometimes there is a battle going on in our mind. So let's strip it down. Just turn it into one whole and continuous awareness. I like to say that awareness that's behind the senses that are perceiving this world. But even then, the senses can be also deceptive. Not everything we perceive with our senses is the way it is. That's why there's so many different opinions. That's why people can't agree on even like what color they're seeing. Some people will swear that they're looking at blue, while others say it's aqua or green. And it has something to do with differences in perception. Some people, especially, I learned somewhere that as we get older, our perception of blue changes because our overall tint of our eyes turns a little bit more yellow. So as we get older, it's almost like we're starting to wear a yellow filter glasses to look at the world through. So that makes what appears to be a kind of a nice juicy blue appear more aqua. And then the other cool thing about blue color I learned is that different cells in our retinas are responsible for perceiving the blue than other colors, which is why blue is the most visible color in the kind of dimly lit spaces. Just do an experiment. Find something blue and place it next to other colors. Let's say you found a blue glove and you placed it next to a red hat and a yellow cup, an orange something, and green. And as the day comes to a close, it gets darker and darker. In the kind of twilight hour, it will almost seem like the blue is glowing. And that's because it's perceived by a separate part of your eye. And that's why blue has been had this very almost spiritualistic significance throughout the history. Not to mention blue pigments tended to be the most expensive ones. Blue is very precious. So that's another topic that I've touched on in college. We had a class called Psychophysiology of Perception, very fancy sounding, sciencey class. It was kind of a advanced science-based class in an art school, and everybody was petrified of this class because it was very difficult to pass it. A lot of theories, how the eye is built and how it perceives and why we perceive this color, what happens if the color changes, and pattern recognition, all these psychological effects of color. There's a lot to cover there, a lot of jargon. A lot of people failed this course multiple times. Luckily, I passed this one. I probably thanks to the fact that I found it interesting. It does help. It makes you curious, and when you're curious, you're seeking more information rather than avoiding it. So I was not bothered by it. But that's the kind of little bits of knowledge about blue color, why it's more visible longer in the day. White wouldn't be a good camouflage color if you wanted to be invisible in the dark. And the psychological effects. Why is orange motivating while green is relaxing and red is enraging? Because that's how our psychology works. It's evolutionary adaptation to threat and to, yellow and orange is usually the color of tasty things. That's kind of like, this is safe to eat, right? And yeah, I feel like this is the drawing. This might be time. I can still mess with these areas here and make it into a multiple hour exercise. But I think it can end here for the purpose of the video. So I am going to take a better photo of it and put it in the end. Maybe even I will manage to create a very fast time lapse of this whole process, just to get the idea of the steps that were taken. Alright, and this is it. I'm not saying goodbye because I'll be back. It's a continuous project after all.